Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall be seeing what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Have I turned my sound up? I don't know. I feel so much louder with my own ears now, but who knows why. Anyway, what are we gonna? You know what I should talk about today. Well, there's going to be a D&D session later today. What's going to happen? I don't really know per se, because I'm not entirely sure what their plan is. So we'll see. Hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow at 6:17 PM on Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Yes. So I mean, there's going to be. I'm trying to do some planning, but also it's really hard to plan for this because I'm also not entirely sure what they're going to be doing. I know immediately what they're doing, but I don't know more like on a grand scheme what they're going to be trying to be doing. So I've got some like immediate things planned, and then the rest of it is just going to be like we're just going to have to figure out what on earth is going on. Yes. So what I am going to talk about today is what I started to talk about a little bit yesterday, but I recorded it quite late and it was like immediately after it happened. That makes it sound like a really grandiose thing. It's not. I just read a new webtoon. Well, it's not new. It's been out for like a couple of years. New to me, perhaps to say. A webtoon called Everything is Fine. And I would highly recommend that you go watch it, go read it yourself if you want. I would say it's basically a dystopian thriller horror, despite the much more cutesy appearance that things have. It does get pretty dark, I would say. So I would not, if you're like, oh, I don't really like that dark stories, then I would give this one a miss. But I think it's very, very good at being a thriller. There's not like jump scares or anything in it. There's no like. It might. I was gonna say there's no grotesque imagery, but I guess it kind of is. But it's not like a forefront of it. I think what it does pretty well is this very strong underlying and continuous tension that it has going on, and the real sort of feeling that no one is safe, I guess. And I'm here to talk about it properly now. I'm not going to give you any spoilers in a moment. Okay, I guess there'll be mild spoilers. It is one which I think is very nice to get into completely blind. Oh no, my shovel. Because then you're not as sure exactly what conceptually is going on. Things have a very sort of interesting feel. Because I think it is nice to go into it under the assumption that, not that everything is literally fine, but, what an unawareness of what's going on. And it is pretty short. Like, I think it's about 90 pages or so. So you can knock it out in one evening, like I did. Although, to be fair, I did it spread out over quite a few hours, just reading bits and pieces here. To extent where I, ended up recording my Animal Crossing episode very, very late that day. But yes, it is good. I would recommend it, especially if you like thrillers, and especially if you like thrillers which are like tension, but not necessarily like slashers kind of thing. I like horror movies, but my favourite horror movies are always ones which can create, I mean, it's not a movie, it's a webcomic, an underlying sense of tension of, things are about to go wrong and you're on the edge of your seats and your heart is racing because you know it's about to go wrong. But of course, like, the characters don't know or something like that. A sort of dramatic irony. But yes, I warn you before I go into mild spoilers, and I warn you before I go into heavy spoilers, because I'm going to talk about it. And a thing I said yesterday was like, I don't think it's like the pinnacle of all writing, and to be fair, I do agree with that. I don't think many things are the pinnacle of all writing, to be fair. I think that's a really high bar, but I do think it has good writing. I think at times, I will say that like, it does, I'm not sure self-indulgent is the right word, because I think that's too much. But it's not self-indulgent, but it is, sometimes maybe I put like the way it. I think if I was to say it specifically, the way it circles back to things, sometimes it does it quite frequently, in a way, but sometimes it's quite sort of like on the nose in a way, but what it does fantastically is both a very fantastic concept, and it builds up the atmosphere very, very well, I think. So yeah, like, but this is not me saying like, oh, it's like a 4 out of 10 writing. I still think it's like a 7 out of 10, which is still good. I think. I'm not sure. I would have to evaluate it more, because I will say I don't really read that many webtoons or something, so I don't think it's fair to judge it in the same writing context as like you would a book or something. All I can say is it's engaging, which I think is the most important part. But anyway, I'm going to start getting into mild spoilers now. So if you don't know what's going on with it, I would recommend that you can at least read the first part and see if you like it or not. If it's not your thing, fair enough. If it is your thing, continue on. But essentially, the thing is called Everything is Fine, and you follow the story of Maggie and Sam, a husband and wife who look like we're sort of like textbook picture perfect couple, from like, I would say like retro America, like 30s America. I forget when is that like age, but like the nuclear age or whatever it's called. Of like a breadwinning man of household going out to work in some who knows white collar job, and then the matriarch, she's a stay-at-home mum who takes care of the household duties. It's very, very typical in that respect, because it's leaning into it, and everything is so picture perfect. When here in Pleasantville, it's not called Pleasantville, I forgot what it's called, the town we're in, but like as you read, like very, very quickly you get the underlying sensation that it's like this, obviously everything is right is very forced. I think it's like literally on the first 2 or 3 pages, where everything is obviously probably not fine, but you're not sure why, and you're not sure what's going on. There's an underlying sort of question of like, why are they acting like this? Like, what are they trying to forget or disregard, or why are they doing this play pretend? And I think a very big question is, why does everyone have a massive cat head? Because it's basically not even spoken about. People don't even look at it, but it is like undeniably strange. We do look like we're humans wearing a giant mascot head costume. And then, you're sort of reading on in the first chapter or so, and you're like, what is going on? And within the first few parts, you figure out just how weird everything is. Notably, the fact that they keep pretending that the family dog is still alive, but when Maggie goes to feed the dog is very, very clearly dead and has long been dead. But they still put on the charade as if everything is fine and the dog is alive. That, I think, that little synopsis there basically sort of summarises the entire premise of this thing, is that clearly things are not fine, but everyone is pretending it is. Why? Who knows? And everyone is falling into this very familiar sort of cookie cutter, perfect nuclear family sort of thing. Well, I say nuclear family. Maybe nuclear couple is perhaps a more accurate word. Because it is a thing which is sort of, now we're getting into bigger, milder spoilers. I think that as you sort of read along, you end up noting, especially in the second chapter, when she's at like a children's play park by herself, there are no children anywhere. And it's very strange. And I'm not going to give like a summary of the entire thing, but basically throughout this entire first part is this sort of uncovering of not being able to handle things being weird. Things you cannot pretend everything is fine forever, and you start to see and learn the rules of the game. Essentially, it's heavily implied, so this is getting to spoilers for like the first season, I think it's called. It's heavily implied that the two have a child, but the child isn't physically with them or whatever. The child, whatever they're doing, they're playing pretend for their child. And that's who they care about. It's also very evidently clear that everyone else is sort of playing into this cookie cutter play pretend as well. And you start to learn the rules of a game, that this is some sort of dystopian society where this new instated government wants perfect citizens in a way, or good citizens in a way. And how do you be a good citizen? You follow the rules, you don't upset the order, and should anyone else stand out of line, you report them to the government, essentially. And but this is when, like, as you sort of learn the rules of the game, you're like, oh, this is why the premise becomes quite interesting, because it's not a game about sort of just breaking out of this sort of Stepford Smiler society. It's a game about both doing so and watching your back, because betrayal, alliances, trust can all be shattered within a moment, an instance. As it seems, as you learn in the first season, everyone has their children being held hostage with, and this is going to be quite dark, the threat from the new government of their children being put to a final rest if they don't comply, essentially. And you know the rules of game, that there's this corrupt sort of system where basically if you are a good citizen, you need to essentially report your neighbours doing suspicious things. Where basically anyone at the drop of a hat is willing to throw someone else under the bus, because the perspective is, if I don't do it to you, you'll do it to me, and that's my and my child's life on the line. And that's where it's sort of like, it's almost like a death game, I would say. And that's what makes it so very engaging, because you see basically everyone sort of, as a reader, you know, it's sort of like, you know, really you should all be trying to fight the greater evil of the government, but it's not that simple, is it? You see how some people end up complying with the system, some people sort of feed into the system, some people try and rebel against it, but those who rebel get shut down, essentially, quite quickly as well, because everyone else is sort of like, hey. This is, you know, if I see you standing out of line, either I can turn a blind eye, which is entirely possible, this can happen, or I rat you out for my own personal gain and I become one step closer to seeing my child again, essentially, or something along those lines. So everyone is in this sort of game of betrayal and trying to look out for yourself, but also trying to, you know, get along at the same time. Is it possible? Is it doable? Who knows? Certainly, it isn't easy, I would say. But anywho, that's what you learn from the first sort of season, which is like the first 30 or so chapters, or pages, I should say. So now we're going to get, I'm going to say like all spoilers are off territory now. So if you haven't read it, then please do. I would say at the time of this recording, only season 3 has been released. Season 4 is being released later this month, which I'm very excited for. But you get a peek into really the sort of dark and twisted nature of it, the sort of conspiracies going around, because it raises a lot of questions, you know, about what someone will do for someone they love, right? It's, you know, the same way in the death game. About Hunger Games, you know, Battle Royale, these things are so enticing as well, I think, to a lot of people. It's because it's this mentality of, obviously it's the government or the people who run the system who have created this awful situation for everyone. But if you find yourself, you know, as that rat in the maze, it's either you or it's them who will live. And if you don't do it to them, someone is going to do it to you. And is that a risk that you are willing to take? And you get to see a sort of whole range of different human emotions, I think, and reactions to this. You get to see people who have completely given up and just saying like, well, whatever happens. If people try and betray us, then so be it. We're going to live now in the moment. And you see the bad ending, which is awaiting for them. You see people who try and sort of game the system. You know, people are like, well, you know, I'm going to basically completely buy into the system. I will make alliances and then I will break them if it serves me a greater benefit. You can see people who completely buy into the system but don't care about the nature of it in the end. You know? People who love this sort of psychotic behaviour which can arise from everything, but don't try and play into the system in any way. They just like that, sadistic feeling, I suppose. It's very, very dystopian. It's very, very dark. And you end up following interesting lines between trying to play into the system, which is what the husband ends up doing, or trying to rebel against the system, which is what the wife ends up trying to do. And I think if I explain the plot overall, it's seems quite simple, and I suppose it is quite simple on the broad strokes things. There's a lot of questions and mysteries which are going on. You see very early on things which I think this is a thing it does a lot, is you see something early on which you immediately go, that's not right, that's weird, what's up with that? And then it does explain it later on. I think the big reveal is probably the red eye reveal, or what being red status means. When you see it happen to Bob and Linda, and you see the awful fate which befalls him, and it's just absolutely heart-wrenching. I actually had to stop reading for a moment and be like, whoa, okay. Not exactly what I expected, or at least it to be portrayed in that way, and you just sort of see them in these sort of crabs in a bucket sort of style. And I think that the line which really stuck with me from that exact moment is when Linda said, "You could have just let us leave." Which, on face value, it's a very sad thing, being you didn't have to report us, you didn't have to do this, you didn't have to condemn our children to that fate. But if you sort of rewind, you think back that the only reason this happened is because Linda reported her neighbours, who eventually took revenge on them. She could have just let things be as well, and she wouldn't have been in that mess. It's all these sort of things of twisted, sort of everyone turning against each other, which is exactly what the man on top wants, essentially. And it's sort of heartbreaking to see in a way. There's what else very interesting? I don't know. It kind of feels like a heist at times as well. when things are sort of get planned out and executed as well. There's always layers upon layers of betrayal of what they're gonna do, how they feel about it. But I think the reaction to it is really the big part. In the second season, they basically make new friends, and the new friends are well, why don't we work together? Because they basically have to get these merits to ascend again to the next layer, or whatever game they're playing. And they're all right, you've made that friend next to you, we're going to basically target them. They'll get a demerit, and then we'll get a merit, or you two will get a merit. They do it, and then the main characters feel we feel awful after that entire thing. It feels atrocious. And at the time, I actually thought it was very interesting, because the person who was targeted was just hey, it is what it is, I understand, you're just playing the game. We're all in it, we've all been there. And it's the acknowledgement that he was a very safe target because there's only one of him. He has no merits or demerits, so he's not on the risk of being on the chopping block. But yeah, the thing I find most interesting about this entire story is that when I'm reading the first two seasons, a lot of this is I can't believe the authorities are just like this. They're just do you have any proof? And then this is well, no, not really. And then it's well, that's fine. And then I love the reveal towards the end where they don't lampshade it, they address it in character, in universe, and be I don't really care if you have evidence or if it's even good enough evidence. The only thing I care about is there is a paper trail of evidence, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, because I get rewarded if I resolve these crimes with evidence. Which is just that's absolutely perfect. Not only are you fighting this very brutal system which turns everyone against each other, you're fighting a completely rigged system where it's not who's actually right or who's actually wrong which wins, it's who can make up the better lie, essentially, or whose lie is less effort to go with. And then you meet a whole slew of different characters with interesting sort of different perspectives on life and attitudes towards it. I thought Laura was a very awesome character. I think Judy is a very, very interesting character. I'm pretty convinced that she's actually evil, or in some way manipulative, but we don't know how or what way. You see absolutely many brutal deaths where you get introduced to a character and you're okay, I guess this character might stay around for a while. I think basically every single character we've been introduced to who has not been the main two characters has died. I think the exceptions to that is Bob and Linda are technically alive, and in the current act, Judy's crew is mostly alive, rest in peace Charlie, and unknown fate of all the others. It's utterly brutal. With Gina's thing, it's basically just heart-wrenching in a way, where they'll give you a story. Oh, they introduce you to Chris and Gina. Oh, it's like an uneasy alliance that they have. Oh no, the main characters are betraying them. Oh, it turns out that Gina actually trusts them in the end, and despite the fact that knowing that she's sort of being betrayed in a way, she helps them still. And now it's sort of like this unwavering, like, who do you trust, who do you not trust, do you betray those you trust most, etc, etc. And then it turns out, oh, Gina and what's Gina's fake husband called? I can't remember. Sorry, a little pause. I do realise we're at 20 minutes, so I guess I'll round up my thoughts very quickly. But yeah, with Gina's arc, and you know, is she a friend, is she not? And then they betray her, kind of, because they think that they're gonna betray them, and honestly they kind of were. And then there's a big reveal where, like, oh, they've been like sort of betraying each other in a way, and Gina runs away, and then, you know, it looks like that Gina might join the rebel camp, but then she gets killed because she's too volatile. And it's just like, whoa, everything so crazy is going on. It takes you on a real roller coaster, and it's basically this entire world and life is just so brutal and unfair to basically every single character in existence. But yeah, what do I think is going to happen? Should we make some theories? I think probably Sam and I keep knocking over my chapstick. Sam and Maggie are the only ones who will survive the entire thing. I think with her daughter, I assume there's some sort of brainwashing going on with the new government. I do actually like the theory that the children are not actually dying, but I think that's probably not the case. After some recent revelations in the latest chapters. Yeah, I think Judy's evil. I think rebellion, as it currently is not going to work. I don't think they beat the system. I think they will just escape the system with their daughter. Anyway, I cannot wait to see how it turns out. As I understand, season 4 is this month. Season 6, season 5, the final season, will be next year, and we'll see how it goes. But anyway, I highly recommend reading it. It's got disturbing imagery though, so just be warned. Anyway, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.